It's another podcast.
Yes, Carlito. Ambitious day today.
Ambitious.
Huh? We actually just put this together like, what, about 1,000 texts?
Yeah, like last night.
All right, we've got a special guest here. You want to introduce our guest?
Well, I want to introduce my buddy Sean, his long-term friend here. And we've been working together probably about 15 years.
Yeah, well, shit, that time flies fast, man. Fuck.
That long? Really?
Yeah.
That's fucking long time, man.
But before Sean starts, I told him today, about an hour before he showed up, hey, man, you better have a song.
So do you have a song?
I think I could make it up on the fly. Why the hell not?
Go ahead. It's all yours, Sean.
Hello, my name is Sean. I like to drink my whiskey. I like to drive my fucking Dodge and fuck anyone who drives a Ford.
Hey, I'm a Ford driver. Beautiful. I love it, man.
I love it, buddy. That was wonderful. Okay, so let's get this next podcast on the go. And today we are talking concrete?
Concrete commercial.
Commercial concrete.
Commercial concrete.
So this is not closed caption. This is CC, but not closed caption.
That's
this
right.
is concrete, commercial concrete.
That's right.
So Sean, why don't you introduce yourself and just give us a little lowdown about yourself?
I'm Sean. I've been in the industry well over 15 years now. Got my introduction to concrete working for Duff & Concrete.
A big player in the business.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I was a quality control technician, or they say the voodoo doctor. You know,
The voodoo doctor.
Yeah,
Is that what it's called?
yeah. It's almost like it's almost like you're throwing the chicken bones on the ground and figuring out, okay, is this a good load or not? Like, yeah. So for me, it was I was a technician with them, and I would doctor the loads. Like you go on site and you'd have a super who would not speak English except oh, fuck you, caray, or something.
Portuguese. It's always Portuguese.
Or, hey, stronzo. I said I wanted a 4 inch. Okay, so a 4 inch slump meaning like the concrete falls 4 inches when you pull it through a slump cone, but we'll get into that. But yeah, so they want me to doctor the load, make it wet, make it work for them, go into a variety of different formwork, a lot of architectural formwork, did a lot of heavy industrial jobs, did a lot of jobs with the Canadian government, did a runway at CFB Trenton.
Holy cow, man.
Love that.
You're on the second or third page of this resume. What the fuck's going on?
This guy's amazing.
Yeah, no, we did a lot of work. We did everything from high rises to military applications. So you called us, we did it. So
Wow. So you came in and you were part of the crew, or you were part of like the concrete gets spec'd a certain way and then the crew?
Exactly. The concrete gets spec'd a certain way. I come in, I ensure the quality of our product. I doctor the loads if we have to. Say you get a load that's a bit dry. Okay, you doctor the load with either plasticizers, air entrainment, things like that. Then move on to other things like, okay, this load's a bit dry, or this load's a bit wet. Okay, like leave that off to the side. We'll bring this truck in, and it's not going to time out yet, so we'll get the, just kind of managing the day-to-day
So
action.
concrete's basically like this serious song and dance. Like, I mean, when...
Oh, absolutely. It's the first thing that goes in the ground, and it's the last thing that anybody thinks of. And if you have, a shit foundation going in, you're going to have a shit product that doesn't matter whether you use the nicest granite countertops or the nicest finishes. If your foundation shit, the rest of the product's going to be shit.
Well said. There's a little bit of static.
Yeah, someone's vacuuming in the shop.
They're drilling.
Caray,
Turn it on. I actually just...
No, we can't do that.
No. So we just want to do
We like
another...
live.
we want to do another shout out because we keep forgetting about doing this at the top of
We
the...
didn't forget. I put it in.
Go ahead, Carlito.
Listen, Sean, when you first walked in, you met Mark. He's the
Yep.
owner of this company.
Skylux Roofing.
I want everyone to know that Skylux isn't just a flat roof company.
No.
These guys do siding and paneling. There's so many things these
Metal
guys
work.
do.
They
That's
do
right.
all kinds of stuff. We're in a live working workshop here.
But even more important for me, Mark has gone out of his way to allow us to do something better for the industry, and he's a huge team player. And I just want to keep doing shout outs.
Huge
he's
shout
just
out
so
to him.
amazing to even have us here.
So that's the noise that you hear in the background. The guys are actually cleaning up and getting ready. It was a rainy day today, so a lot of guys are
Rain
doing shop
day.
work, as you know probably as well too.
absolutely.
Let's get back to concrete. So I'm fascinated because it's true. You're right. Concrete isn't the prettiest. It's not the most.
It can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be, but it's not the prettiest when you talk about homeowners and everything. Or you talk about politicians. You talk about tendering. You talk about commercial applications. It's not the prettiest, but it is an extremely important aspect of construction. Huge.
Absolutely.
I want to know more about the whole industry from the time that it's ordered to the time that it's cured. I want to know. I want you to take us through that whole trip. What are the bullshit aspects of this industry? You know, what are the typical stereotypes of this industry? What do we have to deal with? What do we have to change? I want to change shit. I want to make the shit better. I want to learn. I want younger guys getting into this. We all know that concrete is a hard job. Yeah. It is an extremely hard, physically demanding job. Exactly. And if you have a shit attitude, you can't do this job. But if you love this industry and you want to do concrete, then you'll have a different kind of attitude. So, Sean, I really want you to take us through that whole trip, man.
No, absolutely. And like you said, man, a lot of the industry, you know, it's the last thing you think about. It's a very physically demanding job. And then on top of that, these guys, you know, compared to, say, carpenters or the electricians or the other guys, they're not paid as much. You know, some of these guys are making, you know, $20 an hour. Wow. When the form finish carpenters, you know, anywhere 35, $40 an hour. But it all depends on if you're unionized or not. And if you're not unionized, you know, you're kind of at the shit end of the spectrum. And it's unfortunate.
So true.
It's really unfortunate because there's a lot of guys doing a lot of good work or piecework who are just getting the shaft because, you know, they think, oh, yeah, it's not really, you can hire anybody off the street. And that's just not the case.
Is that a common mentality in the industry?
I think so, yeah. Some of it is a common mentality where, you know, you'll see guys, you know, if you don't like it, you know, go work for another forming company, right? Especially in the residential sector, you know, you see a lot of that. But when you get to the more commercial ICI side, where, you know, you have 100 different eyes from 100 different government agencies or regulatory bodies or consultants looking after the job, you know, 500 white hats for 3 yellow hats working, you know, that mentality. You know, people...
Why are the white hats always the fucking cleanest ones on the job site?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a second, aren't you a white hat?
Yeah, I am. A white hat with a lot of grime on it.
I'm not picking on anybody, but I do notice when you drive by a job site, you really notice those white hats very easily.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they stand out like a sore thumb.
I guess they get wiped before they get put back into the truck.
Probably.
Is that what happens?
They go in a special suitcase.
Exactly.
Can you talk about some of the challenging jobs that you've come across?
One of the most challenging jobs we had was CFB Trenton, where we were rebuilding the runway and a couple other installations I can't really talk about, doing an NDA. We were redoing the de-icing bay and part of the runway there. They had Dufferin Construction and contracted out the concrete because of time and because of space and location to a local provider. I think it was CBM and Lafarge, and they both didn't meet the requirements, right? We had, you know, low breaks after 7 days. And
what is that?
Typically what they do is they test cylinders at 7, 14, and 28 days to test strength. So at 7 days, you should be getting about 75% strength, cured strength. After 14 days, you should be looking at about 85, and then they take another set of cylinders for the 30-day strength, and it should be well on its way to reaching its maximum MPa or strength. And if it's not, well, shit, you got big problems there.
And if it's not, what are the causes? Is it because of the way it was poured, or how quickly, or
too much water?
Poured, either the mix was not right.
Weather, is weather an issue?
Weather's a factor. There's like 100 different factors in you know, a concrete pour, right? Was the equipment that mixes the concrete or batches the concrete, was it letting enough cement into the mix? Was it letting enough sand, slag, things like that? You know, there's 100 different things. How much water each truck has on it now, because before you would dump all the water in your drum before you would go do a mix, but now due to environmental regulations and you have the Ministry of Environment breathing down these guys.
Slur, you can't dump that.
Yeah, you can't dump that. So now you're rebatching that with that amount of water on. So if you have 100 liters of water on, you got to account for that in the mix, right?
That's become a norm now because of that?
Absolutely. It's become a big norm.
Yeah, we got clean out boxes and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They have, I forget the technical name for it, but basically it's this bucket that goes at the end of the chute.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, you rinse it down.
Your tools.
You rinse your tools. They take that, what's left, they dump it in a bin that the contractor has provided, and then they go back to the yard and say, hey, I got approximately X amount of water on me, load me up with this. And then it's up to the driver when they're washing up to slump up the load before they head out. So from there, they head out to the site. They get to site, depending on the weather. If it's really cold, you know, you got to account for temperature, because if you're pouring concrete and the concrete is less than 10 degrees, it's going to freeze.
Surprise, surprise, there's water in concrete.
Exactly.
So a really good question. Can you pour concrete in the winter?
This is Canada, Carlito.
Yeah,
no,
we do.
I know.
It's information for
I know,
everyone,
but I'm
right?
like surprised that you get a lot of homeowners, you get people in general that don't know the industry, and they don't realize, okay, I guess you guys just all shut down for the winter months. No,
we go 24/7, and it really depends, right? You know, we have MTO projects, we have residential products.
You guys are pouring on holidays. holidays. You guys are pouring on Sundays. You
Absolutely.
were pouring on all kinds of days. You pour when you have to pour. You have to take advantage of that,
Except
right?
for when it pours from the sky.
Yeah, that's
Exactly. I mean, one of the things is
try the veal.
Yeah, but one of the things is like you add heat to the concrete, and one of the ways you do that is you add hot water, you add additives like calcium, you add other additives, like water reducers to prevent shrinking and cracking in the concrete when you're pouring.
And it doesn't affect the actual curing process again of the concrete?
Well, it doesn't. So once the concrete arrives on site, we pour it. It now becomes the contractor's responsibility. You got to insulate that. You got to provide heaters to that. You could pour in winter. You just got to provide the right conditions, right? And when people come back and say, "Oh yeah, your concrete shit," my wall fell apart when I pulled the forming. Okay, well, did you insulate it? No. Did you put blankets on it? No. Did you have a heater on it? No. Well, then it's your problem.
That's basically the reality of it. It's true, because it's just you guys are bringing a product that's brought on site, but it belongs to the site foreman at that point and how that product's going to be fully cured, because your product is not complete after it's poured.
Absolutely.
It's complete after that magic 28-day period or whatever.
Exactly.
It is, right?
And what a lot of people don't realize is when you're doing massive pours and you see the construction on the highway, and they're like, "Oh, they poured the concrete last night, right?" And they still have the formwork on it. Why can't they pull it off? Well, technically, you're not supposed to pour or to pull that formwork off until the temperature, the internal temperature of the concrete is within 10 degrees of the ambient temperature outside. If it's too hot or too cold and you pull the formwork off too early, you'll see it on a lot of bridges on the Gardner, all the spider cracking and stuff.
And that's the reason why.
That's pretty much the reason.
How do they test the concrete to find out what the temperature, the core temperature? Are they using a heat
cylinders?
gun?
Yeah, so they have cylinders, and one of the things that like a lot of government jobs are doing now is they're like burying little nodes inside the concrete. So when they have like, I guess, where they put the rebar in or they tighten down the formwork, they'll slip like a little node in and it'll test the temperature of the concrete as it's curing. And
holy fuck!
I never
this
even
is
heard that
exciting,
yet.
man. I love this. This is amazing.
And we talk concrete trash all the time.
So you know what? Since you brought up the Gardner, I want to actually talk about how, me personally, I hate the fact that they're tearing down the Gardner.
Oh, same here.
Because I hate the fact that Toronto is a big city. We are a big city. For people that are not familiar with Toronto, Gardner is basically an elevated overpass highway, some structure,
Yeah, it's
right?
a major artery in the city.
It's a major artery from one end, from the west to the east, and vice versa. It runs that way. But the problem is that you get a lot of politicians and a lot of people that are crying that it's an eyesore.
Yeah, a couple snowflakes, the soy boys.
And they keep
libs.
forgetting that, okay, sure, not everybody can take mass transit. Not everybody can ride a bicycle. That you cannot get rid of what do you call this thing? The fucking car. You can't get rid of that thing.
Well said, Manny.
Right?
Yeah,
So we need to actually build the Gardner or repair it. But what I get frustrated with is when you see those spider cracks and you're seeing Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid. And why not just build? In today's technology, I'm not a concrete guy. You're a concrete guy. I'm assuming in 2019, we could actually build a concrete structure, elevated highway that will last centuries without any issues.
Well, how about in Germany? Germany's highways are good for 50 plus years.
In Germany, also, you look at their road construction, and you gotta love the Germans because when they build something, they build it on steroids, right?
Yeah,
their road
feet thick.
their road base is 1 meter thick. I mean, you drive on the autobahns, that concrete's not cracking for the next 50 to 100
that base
years.
is 1 meter thick?
1 meter thick.
I've heard of spots being 7 to 8 feet thick.
Yeah, depending on the geographic area and what's underneath it. Yeah, some places are 8 feet thick.
I was at an event, I think it was last year, for brick and pavers and stuff like that, and they were actually showing a new system of laying your pavers, right, on roadways. And this system was taken from Europe, where they were building a 12-inch concrete base first, and then put the pavers on top of it. It wasn't about gravel, it wasn't about sand, it wasn't about any screening, it was a concrete base. And I was like, that makes sense.
We should leave that for the landscaping show.
Sure. But I'm just saying, to your point, 1 meter thick base for a roadway makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. Yeah, the cars are traveling on it every single day.
Parking on it, sitting on it.
Exactly. Yeah. There's an accident, the cars are sitting there. But when you come back to the Gardner, it was built in the 50s. And a lot of the city infrastructure that you're seeing now, because I live downtown too. I recently moved down here. Big mistake. Hey, I'm a country boy, so I mean, I love green pastures and everything. But yeah, getting back to the Gardner, you look at it, it wasn't meant to handle the amount of abuse and traffic that it has on it now. It was also built at a time where, you know, they just wanted to get it up and running and, you know, have the whole city in the sky concept. Okay, cool. But now it's like, okay, we're stuck with it. We can't tear it down because, you know, we're just going to flood the streets everywhere with traffic because it has nowhere to go. It was a poorly designed.
But my problem is with the civil engineering of Toronto, because when you start building 23 condo towers that are accessible to one off-ramp on a highway, and you're begging for a problem, right?
Exactly.
If by chance, by miracle, you're the political figure that's involved in actually fixing or building a better Gardner, how would you do that?
What I would do is I would look at different precast options. When you look at the 427, all those beams and everything that we put in, hell, even the Union Pearson Express, I was involved in that project for 2 years of my life. All that is precast.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so all the beams and everything running across that the tracks sit on, that's all precast concrete. What they'll do is they'll pour it off site. They'll put it in a form
in perfect conditions.
Perfect conditions.
They bring they pull
that
off
echo?
A little bit. Yeah, they pull off the formwork. They bring it to site. They have a crane lifted into place, and away you go. Right. So what I would do is they already shut down the Gardner for a year before. Right. Shut down the Gardner. Tear out every fucking pillar that you can. I mean, because with today's technology, and you see it in Germany, and
rebar work has completely changed now.
Oh, exactly. Rebar is getting coated now because they realize the rapid chloride penetration. So the salt from the road, when it starts to melt and everything, starts to penetrate in the concrete, then it starts to freeze and.
Because concrete is porous.
Exactly. And
it could be dense depending on the pour, right?
Yeah, depending on the mix you want. You could get architectural concrete, which is as smooth as this tabletop right here. And then you could get guys to finish it, and I'll put all sorts of coatings in on it. If it were me, I'd tear all of it down. I'd close the Gardner for a year, as you know, as unpopular as it may be, as much as people would hate me. Okay, tear it down, put it in a brand new product, formwork everything, I'd say, and then putting in the pillars wouldn't take any more than 8-9 months, and then putting in all the precast would take no time. Build your road base.
Wait a second. That's you doing it, not with people trying to stop it and inspect it.
No. Hang on a sec. That's somebody who knows how to do it versus politicians who don't have a fucking clue which end of the hammer is used.
But paperwork always makes everything a longer process, right?
No, absolutely.
I mean, the more people you get involved, the more deadlines get passed, right?
Yeah. To Carlito's point, you get into a situation. I used to run into a situation, and a lot of it the times on site. I mean, I'm 31 years old, and I got a baby face right now.
We're still older than everybody.
I'm always the oldest.
I know I got a baby face, but you know, you'd run into a site, and I've been working with Carlito for a very long time, and I know how the construction game works. And you'd run into some kid on site who's maybe 19, 20 years old. He's been appointed from WSP or one of these big consultant firms, or you know, he's working directly for the city, and his job is there for $17 an hour to sit and, you know, watch the concrete pour. And he's been given like a little fact sheet what to look at, and if anything goes outside of this, you have to stop the work immediately. And that's the other thing you have to deal with too, the consultants who have no idea how the fuck to do the job.
So how did they get their job?
Like how any other politician gets their job.
Fuck.
But you know what?
Somebody.
Without
because
because
I pour a lot of concrete too.
No, exactly.
Layering concrete makes separation. So those are break points.
Exactly.
What's the actual term for that?
Cold joints.
Cold joints, that's it.
But getting back to both of what you guys were saying, and I just want to kind of hog the mic for a second.
Go ahead.
A lot of people are complaining about construction going on downtown, and they don't realize if we're not doing construction, first of all, you're not going to be able to drive on the roads. You're not going to have any water. You're not going to have any hydro. So the next time you guys see construction workers blocking the road, say thank you instead of telling them to get lost or get finished. I hate hearing guys screaming at contractors that are working their ass off to give these privileged people
you know what
a
the
place to
biggest
drive.
thing that people are forgetting when they see all this construction in the core going on? They're forgetting that we're building a better city to attract more people to come here to visit or to work or to move.
Exactly.
If you've got a shit infrastructure city and a shit city that's just a Band-Aid on top of each other, you're not going to attract anything. You're not going to be a viable city for the Olympics, for world events, for anything like that. People are going to want to move out of there and not give a shit about it, and that's not what we should be doing. Toronto is a big city that should be competing against other big cities.
Absolutely.
All this talk that you've been saying, Sean, reminds me of the big big dig back in Boston. When they did that, how long ago was that?
That was 2000, 2002, something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say about almost 20 years now. That was a major nightmare for the city.
Yeah.
But look at the city now.
It's so funny. When we want something built to make money, it gets built right away.
Oh, yeah.
But when we don't want something to build and you want to make lots of money, it gets prolonged.
Oh, yeah. The other solution to me is, people think I'm kind of crazy, but, we have situations where we have bridges out and, built highways out in the water. My thing is, why don't we build, because the lake's shallow to a certain point, why don't we build like an entire freeway connecting, the Niagara area to Toronto?
Fucking great idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
Why don't I build it out on the water? We have tons of space.
I think we have
there.
our new prime minister.
So, don't
get me started.
I had a crazy idea about why aren't we building a tunnel that goes from the 427 to the DVP? So if you wanted to bypass the core,
yeah, you just
drive
smart.
right through.
So smart.
But I understand that would cost a lot of money. But I'm like, listen, the French and the English did it, and it worked, and they did it over a channel, right? A tunnel, a channel. I was eventually going to get to it.
Yeah, we just dug. I was on
built over it.
Yeah. I should have got a bit more into where I am now. I'm actually working for a company right now called BAI Communications. So we install like DAS systems and provide Wi-Fi to the TTC and everything. But before that, I was working at TTC and I was helping them a lot with the TYSSC project, so the new subway extension in Vaughan. We just dug, 13 kilometers of track, so it wouldn't be anything to get the TBM back in the ground and start digging again. That's what they should have been doing for the last 30 years. Just keep digging.
I was surprised to read, I think it was last year or the year before, I read an article where Toronto didn't get its first subway until the 1940s. So Chicago and New York already got theirs. They were already 60 years ahead of us. And I read somewhere where the reason that it took us another 50, 60 years to actually get a subway approved was politician and bureaucratic bullshit. And I'm like,
we're the only country 50 years behind.
Well, this is the bullshit. And we don't want this episode to turn into a political, Carlito and I were talking about earlier today.
Oh, Sean loves this.
But we don't want it to, we want it to be concrete, right? We want it to be about the grassroots guys, the guys that show up on this job site, they know their shit like yourself. And also the guys that are, like the 18, 19-year-old's got a clipboard and he's speaking to a consultant that doesn't know shit about concrete. You should really have the guys and girls who know their shit on the front lines.
Exactly.
And they should have a voice. They should have a voice that should be expressing this to the correct people. And reality-wise, if you're a consultant or if you're a politician or if you're anybody that's in authority and you don't fucking know the answer, just express that you don't fucking know the answer. You're going to gain a lot more respect if you do that instead of you try to pretend that you know the answer.
Exactly. And then you can say, okay, I'm going to come back to you with a proper answer because I don't want to lie to you. And I mean, you
cover my ass because I don't want to get fired.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what I heard. I was fortunate enough to be invited to a Minkus job site where they did a pour.
Yeah.
And it was a 19-hour day where they were pouring. It was 750 truckloads.
Yeah.
They poured. They were doing a raft slab.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what they were doing. I was astonished. And it was raining, but they were factoring that in. This was done in conjunction with Lafarge. It was their biggest pour to date in North America. And I was just blown away on how much concrete was just like they had 5 chutes going down, then they had 3 pumps going down.
Oh, yeah.
And we were shooting the whole experience from like the crack of dawn. We started at 1 in the morning, right? And it worked away. We saw the sunrise. It went all day long to the sun setting. And then obviously there was some hot heads towards the end because of the shift change and the truck drivers change and all this other stuff. Overall, for me, just looking at it from the outside, it was such a well-oiled machine. I was just like looking at these guys and who knew, like everybody knew what they had to do. That's what I'm fascinated by when it comes to concrete. I want to hear more about that kind of stuff that you've seen or what kind of big pours.
Yeah, so to kind of like take you back into how the whole industry works. So the first thing that happens before any of this goes on site, you have to call to order the concrete and you tell them, okay, this is the mixed design I want because I'm going to be working on a roadway or, this is going to be a raft slab, like you said, or this is going in a parking garage. So there's different mixed designs and there's different additives that you put into the concrete based on the order. And then we could upsell you. We could have brass and trained fibers to make the concrete stronger. We could have synthetic fibers added on
What kind
site.
of fibers? So brass?
One of the military applications that we did was 150 MPa concrete.
150?
150. So it was what we call like a super mix, like a really one-time kind of mix, like a special mix for a customer.
I thought you couldn't do anything more than 115.
That's pure concrete.
I thought 90 was the magic number, is not?
That's just pure concrete. That doesn't take into the fact what it cracks at, and it doesn't take into the fact like any of the fibers or the additives that are added on site or after the fact.
So this is stiff.
Yeah, so this stuff is stiff, and I can't really get into the details.
No,
of
for
it,
sure.
Yeah.
But why would
more.
you? What's the reason why you would need, without divulging stuff that's going to get you legally in trouble? But why would you need 150?
150, you would need it for applications that are exposed to a lot of punishment. That's all I can really say.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah, any environment where you're exposed to a lot of punishment.
I get it. Okay.
You know, you would need that sort of application. And I mean, there's like, and that kind of concrete, like the concrete that went into the Sky Dome, they're saying that when you started to chip it out, you would blow through Hilti drills, you would blow through tools like crazy, and it would have to chip it out by hand because it was just so hard that it would burn out the motors.
I'm glad that you said Hilti and not Bosch.
Oh.
I'm glad you said Hilti too, because I like Hilti.
Yeah. I'm a Hilti guy. So.
Oh, yeah. Surprise!
Yeah, but getting back to it, so you place the order for the concrete, and then it goes to dispatch, and they have to figure out, okay, which drivers you're going to pull in, and you know, you have your A grade drivers, you have your B grade drivers, then you have your reject drivers who, you know, you want to put in towards the end of the shift because you don't want anything going off badly, you know, towards the beginning.
It's so
right?
funny you say that, because there are drivers you don't want.
No,
So gold, silver, and bronze drivers, right?
I don't even think bronze. I think it's like someone took a dump on that and lobbed it off the side of the Gardner. But you get some of those guys, and it's like, okay, so then you have to schedule these drivers accordingly. Then you have to pick the plants, and you have to pick the location of the plants so the loads don't time out, right? Because if you get backed up on site, you're throwing away that load of concrete, and some of these loads could be anywhere from $900 to about $10,000 in concrete, depending on what additives and everything.
$10K for a load?
Yeah, that's, you know, that's nothing.
And I do remember you and I were talking one night. I had called you, and you were working a really late night. You were building a bridge, whatever location. I remember you telling me there was 10 trucks when you showed up that were sitting for about 4 hours, and you had to salvage the concrete that was about to go to garbage.
So
what was the reason why it was sitting for that long?
Just contractors not being organized enough. We tried to salvage a load, and we ended up just dumping it. We had to basically throw a whole ton of plasticizer in it just so we didn't destroy the drum. You replace one of those once or twice at $60,000. You know, you don't want to do that again, whether you're a big construction company or not, right?
That must have hurt. That just must have hurt to just like dump the fucking load, just get rid of it, garbage.
Absolutely. But we'll get more back to that story, because that was actually a funny story. But
I want to hear it.
Yeah, so for the order desk and the dispatchers and everything, it now comes down to the QC manager and the QC supervisor to organize like guys like myself who used to show up on site and make sure that everything would go well. I think one of the coolest pours I ever did was actually the substation right down on Bremner by the not the Rogers Center. Yeah, it is the Rogers Center, the Sky Dome. I still call it the Sky Dome.
I still call it a Sky Dome.
Yeah, it's still Sky Dome.
The stadium downtown, for everybody who's not familiar with Toronto. But
exactly. Yeah, so you know, we had I think it was a 7,000 or 8,000 meter pour that day that was going into the foundation, and it was 32C2, which was like a 32 MPa mix modified for the foundation and everything. So after they you know, and you want your best QC guys on site. You don't want like the intern to show up because, yeah, you know, it's fuck off.
You want him to watch.
Exactly.
You don't want the guys to get angry.
Yeah, you want them to watch and learn, hey, here's the company credit card, go get everyone coffee while they're yelling at me. Hey, caray, where's the concrete?
Why is it always Portuguese screaming?
Why are you looking at me? No, I never got into concrete.
You're Portuguese.
I never got into concrete.
No, I noticed one thing. It's like, okay, you get the WASP at one end of the spectrum who kind of like manage the project because they don't want to get their hands dirty anymore. Then you have the Italians who kind of manage, you know, the Portuguese.
And then you got Sean from the Bahamas.
Trinidad, yeah.
You're at Trini?
Yeah, my parents are from Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow, man.
Yeah, most people look at me like, you're not black, and I keep on going. I tell them, you know, I am from the waist down and kneecap up, so... More than welcome to talk to my wife, Suzanne.
Those are white people. Those are white people. They all think people from Trinidad are all black, and I'm like, listen, man, they're not. It doesn't work that way.
No,
right?
Exactly. Someone had to get all of them there, but that's another.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah, exactly. After you pick your QC guys and you have everything organized, you know, usually these things will start at around 11 o'clock at night. You have a big safety meeting. You load your guys up, they come in, you test the first load, and the first load is usually like a benchmark about how the pour will go. if the QC guy or the QC manager got his mix ratios and everything right, it goes well. But if you have to start fucking with it at the batcher's end, that's the other thing. The batchers,
on the first batch?
On the first batch. We're running behind. We'll send the first load and test the second one just to make sure everything goes perfectly. Batchers, they do not get the respect they deserve because they're under pressure all the time. They got to load a truck in 6 minutes.
So everybody understands what that is. What is that?
Batcher is a guy who sits up in a tower and he basically automates the machine, or he's one of the guys who looks after the automated machines to make sure that the concrete's coming out all right, that there's no mechanical problems with the equipment of it batching and everything. They don't get a lot of respect that they deserve, and dispatchers too to that end, because everybody needs to work cohesively, and if you don't, like, it's going to be a disaster.
He's so pretentious.
Yeah.
No, but it's true. It's just they have little to no time to pull off a perfect fucking throw.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And it's difficult. And then they're under the gun too.
Exactly. You got to batch a truck in 6 minutes. He's got to pull up. He's got to, dispense all the concrete into the truck. The truck's got to go wash up. If he's got to come in for a test, that adds time to everything. So usually what we used to do is we used to test the first 5 loads, and then after that we would test every 5th load. And if there was a problem, okay, we start testing every load until the 5th one was good, and then we'd continue on. And then we'll go to a site like the substation.
That's a lot of loads, Sean.
One could say I'm a load specialist.
I had to, sorry. How's that feel?
Delicious.
Back to loads.
Yeah, so after that, we'll go to a site like the substation where, you have a 7,000-8,000 meter pour going on and everything has to be coordinated perfectly. You have the pump guys on site. The trucks arrive on site and then each truck is then coordinated by the site super or his minions to say, okay, go here, go there, different pumps, different places, and then they start pouring the concrete and it's got to go in one fluid motion. If you have one truck that's late for 5 minutes back at the yard and you get stuck in traffic, it could literally fuck up the entire pour. And we've seen that time and time again where, we're waiting on concrete on site and, contractors don't care that, hey, there's traffic. I remember one job that I was at downtown, the Deloitte towers that they just put up at Bay and Adelaide. The concrete foreman on site would start pouring at 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Yeah, I know.
What the fuck?
Yeah,
well, I was going to get to that. That's why we pour at night. No traffic, keep the concrete cooler.
Exactly, but when you pour at 2 o'clock because you want your guys to get overtime at the end of the week and completely fuck up the entire pour.
Come on.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
It's politics, right? I don't want to, bash on unions, but some of them are really good to work with. Other guys, you don't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole.
This is the kind of business that you got to be working as a collective, not as an individual.
Exactly.
Man.
You got to think of the whole process, start to finish, not just what the consultant's thinking, but how the trade guys are doing on site too. Everyone's got to work together, and if one thing's off, throws everything off.
You ever get any angry fucking homeowners that are living in the condos downtown? You guys start pouring in the middle of the night?
Oh yeah, cops have come by. People used to throw stuff off the balcony at us.
No way.
Yeah, no.
Bananas?
Fuck, are you serious?
Yeah.
They've got balls to throw shit at you guys?
Yeah, that chick throws chairs. So.
Yeah, there was a chick who threw chairs. There was a guy.
She was just stupid.
Yeah, there were guys who were throwing all sorts of shit. I think some guy threw a clay pot off the roof one night. Yeah,
that's assault, man.
Oh yeah. Especially if it cracks somebody in the fucking head, right?
Exactly.
And a lot of those guys who live up in those towers anyway couldn't throw to save their fucking life.
Why would you throw shit at concrete guys? You don't realize that something could happen?
Well, first of all, you moved downtown. You expect it to be loud.
Yeah.
I live at Bathurst and Bloor. There's no quiet.
No.
There's drunk guys up and down the street. The universities are everywhere. The pubs are everywhere. Construction's going on. Not enough people respect construction and construction workers.
I agree with you.
No,
completely.
exactly. Another time, well, it's not just the homeowners or any of the people who live in the next facility. It's the guys working on site. I had one guy throw a piece of rebar at me one time.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
that's basically a spear, man.
Oh, yeah. No, I hear you.
In Portugal, it is.
No, but when you're under pressure and you're under time constraints and everything.
Full rebar? Did he cut it down first?
No, it was I don't know, 2-foot piece of rebar, about 10, 20 mil.
Holy shit!
20 mil.
Stupid.
That's a nice piece of rebar.
Yeah, wait till you get hit with 40 mil, then we'll talk. Right?
Yeah. Well, we built that one house. It was 35 mil.
Yeah,
all the
I
columns.
remember that. Yeah.
It looks like Carlito's got questions, man.
I got a ton of things, dude. First of all, Can we go and dumb it down a little bit? And I don't mean dumb it down, just so people can understand what slump means, what 90 to 115 means.
Okay,
just the basic language to someone talking to a concrete truck or ordering.
I'll get into the three characteristics of concrete. So there's slump, there's air, and there's temperature. So slump is the viscosity of the concrete, how thick, how thin.
How watery?
How watery, how plastic the concrete is. From there, after that, you have temperature, and temperature is everything, right? You usually want the load to be between 15 and 25 degrees. And too hot, it sets too quickly. Too cold, it doesn't set properly. You have air entrainment. So for like a place like this where it's indoors, it's heated all the time, you don't necessarily want air in the concrete. You want the concrete to be as strong as possible.
And why is that?
Because you want the concrete to be as dense and as strong as possible, right? And it finishes nicer and everything. But any exterior applications where the concrete needs to expand, contract, and breathe with the temperatures outside, you add air to it. So it's basically like soap. So you're entraining air bubbles inside the concrete so it doesn't freeze, crack, and shatter on you over the course of the life of the
and
concrete.
And then it behaves like eggs inside, right? Because more air bubbles stronger.
Exactly.
Like
but
eggs,
you don't want too many.
Like an arrow,
you know
arrow
how
bar.
an egg has strength, so it makes it stronger.
Oh, I got you.
So
okay,
typically
cool.
you want the ideal air content in an exterior load, you want to be between 5 and 7%. Anything over that, the concrete will be weak and brittle and cracked. That's what you want to aim for, 5% air entrainment.
Are you able to salvage if everything was not ideal? Because I'm assuming that part of your job is the seasonal factor, the weather factor.
Yes.
Like you can't, I know what you know is a perfect mix and a perfect pour and a perfect cure.
Yeah.
That's probably fucking very rare that happens because you have to deal about seasons. And also you're pouring in the middle of the night, which is cooler. So you got those factors. So, I mean, are there ways to adjust and you shift and change and work?
Yeah, absolutely. You could add water up to a certain viscosity. After that, you have to use plasticizers, right? Because if you have too much water in the load, shrink cracking, your concrete's garbage. One of the best examples of that was CFB Trenton when we were rebuilding the runway there. After the contractor screwed up, the closest Dufferin plant was an hour and a half away in Bowmanville. Oh, the guys who are with Contracting Canada looking after this.
That's a lot of money wasted.
Yeah, but they said, you know what, we will allow this. We'll allow you to go up to 2 hours because CSA says an hour and a half, but most people pour at 2 hours anyway. Say, well, we'll go up to 2 hours with you guys. Just get it here on time, dump it, and leave. So what I would have to do is I'd have to doctor it at that end and tell the drivers, okay, you got to leave here with like a 5 or 6, which is pushing it, but I know that it's going to dry out on, hot summer day on the way to CFB Trenton, right? But if they get caught in traffic, if there's an accident, which what did happen one day, and it was with the first truck, they just called the pour off because you're going to be throwing money away, and we were doing 400 meters a day. It was a crazy job because I had to drive out to Bowmanville. I had to test the first load, burn it all the way over to Trenton, clear security, get through security, set up my tools, let the other guys test again, and then if there was a dispute with them, I'd have to test. And usually a lot of the times there is, because the guys who they hire as testers, they pay them, or back then they paid them like $10 an hour. You have your own car. They have no incentive, to...
They're not motivated.
Yeah, exactly. They come, they do their test. Oh, it's bad. Okay, and then you'd have to prove them wrong. Either their equipment was malfunctioning, which a lot of these guys were, or there was a problem with the way they were testing. There's certain methods you have to be certified to test concrete. So
how do you get that certification?
Go to ACI, American Concrete Institute, and then you could look for a class in your area. And it's usually held at like a college, or it's usually held at an institution, and I think it's like $1,100. You get certified to test concrete.
Is it pretty extensive, or is it?
It's pretty extensive. It's like a 2-3 day course.
Oh wow!
Well, there is another way. You can open up a Cracker Jack box and get it.
It's kind of funny that's probably true.
Yeah, you know what? There was a few times, I won't say on what site, but you'd have like some of these guys, the testers, who didn't really speak that good of an English. So you'd be like, hey, you know what? Well, why don't you go with my buddy? You look like you could use a coffee, right? Slide the intern like the company credit card, and I tell him, don't bring it back for a fucking hour. And then, they'd fuck off, and then we'd just dump all the
trade
trucks
secret, guys.
Bribe people with coffee, or tell them that you're buying first round of jackassers. That usually works.
There's no bribes in concrete.
So there also is faster curing concrete. Is that something you guys use in commercial?
Yeah, there's accelerated concrete. MTO uses a lot of what they call Fasttrack concrete.
Do you like it?
I like doing it. It's a rush. I used to love the rush of doing it, right? Because
adrenaline.
The concrete shows up on site from the minute you add the additives. So it's calcium chloride and plasticizers. You have 15 minutes to get that entire load dumped off.
Really?
Yeah. So they'll like cut patches in the roadway in the 407 to do repairs. You have 15 minutes to load your plasticizers, your additives up, because the concrete starts setting like that, and it goes from, say, 25 degrees Celsius to like 35, 45, like in a matter of minutes. Wow. So you got to dump this shit quickly and get it off. And then the driver's got to wash his fins down and everything. So usually when we do fast track, you get like an old jalopy truck, one that's like on the end of its life, but still running.
Just in case.
Just in case, because you pull up to a site in a brand new truck and then you lose a full load. And then you have to spend, either 10 grand for a guy to crawl inside the drum and chip it out.
That's when you see a grown man cry.
Yeah.
Grown man cry. Am I fair to say that the commercial concrete industry is kind of like the major leagues of concrete? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Like if you really want to be a serious pro, you start there?
Absolutely.
Do the guys leave that world and get into custom, residential, and other kind of concrete business?
Oh, yeah. You see guys like Donald Contracting. I think they were in, I think they do some occasional work doing ICI and stuff like that. But, they do a lot of residential work. They do a lot of basements. They do a lot of forming for basement walls, things like that. You see a lot of guys who are, look
at that. Mark is giving us drinks.
You're the man, Mark.
Look at that.
Grazie. Grazie.
I was going to ask you, fibers. So are we past the days of rebar, or rebar is always going to be a part of this situation?
No, rebar will always have its place, don't get me wrong, but there's some applications where you pour concrete and you can't get rebar in. So you're stuck. Okay, what do we do to reinforce the concrete?
What is the rule of rebar? Like, listen, I drive in the Gardner, back to the Gardner. I don't want to fucking diss it all the time, but there's a reason why I see about 1.5 inches of concrete peeled right off and I see rebar. So I'm assuming that you needed more concrete, more beef.
Well, it's also the mix, right? Because back then they didn't know anything about, salt penetration in concrete and how that would, affect it, right? Because before they would throw sand down on the road and be like, okay, if someone drives out the bridge, it's his fucking fault, right?
Hopefully there's enough sand that it's a ramp.
No, but I
that's why everyone is better
but I'm
driver.
A country guy, right? So like up by me, they throw down hot sand on the road, because salt's going to do fuck all, right? It's going to melt and then it's going to freeze and then you're going to get black ice and skid off into the ditch. So I think that's what I would recommend. Yes, it's a little bit more labor intensive to clean up, but instead of putting brine down, which just destroys bridges.
You can't even see.
Yeah, no, there's
covers your windows.
There's one bridge in Mississauga which I refuse to drive over because
which one?
It's just past Aaron Mills Parkway on the 403 because the contractor put it in. Concrete was the spec, it was beautiful, but the city of Mississauga used brine to basically melt all the snow, and they drove and people were driving over this thing. But after 1 year construction, you could already see the concrete starting to flake. And I'm like, why would you do that?
Was the city notified not to use this?
We told them and we recommended not to use it. They still do it anyway.
Didn't get the email, I guess. Eh?
And for everyone that doesn't know about concrete that's listening, you can't just patch concrete.
No.
It's not the solution to it.
Well, that's why there's such an artistry and a professionalism to actually pouring it.
And keeping the pours consistent so that they're mixing. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is, I hear this all the time because I do concrete too. I tell people not to over-vibrate.
You tell people
weird.
To what?
Was that the microphone?
No. You said to vibrate. I think, let me translate for Carlito.
Let me say that again.
Over-vibrate.
Yeah, I think Manny wanted to say that. So you can over-vibrate. Yes. You can bring all the pea stone or the rock down to the bottom and then leave the slush on the top, which will crack.
Exactly. And then you lose all the tensile strength, right? So basically, you're going to have it's like a beer. You're going to have all the foam sitting on top and all the contents sitting on the bottom, and you want it to have a very good mix, right? I mean, I like my beer cloudy personally, right?
Sean, can you give us a little bit of a glossary of translations? I want to know some of the terminology that guys use. If they're drivers and batchers and everybody, are there certain key words that we don't know about that I want to know
Mostly
about?
hand signals.
Hand signals is another thing, right? But they say, because a lot of these guys, like I said, who are testing, they you know, they don't speak that good English, right? Driver will pull up to site, QC guy's not there, only this guy who doesn't speak any English. And, you know, a guy, you know, I hate ripping on the Portuguese. We're going to have to do it again.
That's okay. Manny's
Don't
Portuguese.
worry,
Yeah,
I don't have any feelings.
Yeah, so the guy was like, "Hey, carai, you know, I wanted a Portuguese 4, which is like a 6-inch slump, right? So the spec will be 4-inch, but you know they'll get the guy to test the concrete, and this is why I don't want to live in condos downtown because they pour everything wet because they want everything to go fast, right?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
And the
Vibrates fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The contractors doesn't want to pay for the plasticizers, right? So they soak the shit out of the concrete, they pour it, and they walk away. That's why you see a lot of these places falling apart after 5
That's
years.
funny you say that. Here's the callback. How do you fix a building that's already built and people are living in it?
You can't.
You can't. How do you do that?
Now people can look at the Gardner as an example. That's the exact same thing.
Yeah, it all comes down to, you know, they want to make their money, and the faster they build these condos, and you know, the faster these yuppies and these hipsters occupy.
I mean,
them.
I'm not in that business, but
Yeah.
is it fair to say that there is already a lot of money to be made when you tender a job and you are the concrete guy that's going to do this job? There's
Extras.
yeah,
extras.
you're making good money, aren't you? So why do you want to make more money? Is it just greediness? They don't give a shit about this building later on.
Well, a lot of these contractors don't get paid for 90 days, right? It depends, right? So you're carrying the cost of your crew
True.
and everything for, you know, 90 days. And it's like, hey, I need to get paid, right? So there's incentive on you. Hey, look at how many floors I built. And some of these guys, they give you a bonus for finishing fast. I'm not going to say which companies, obviously. There's incentives for these guys. A contractor will be like, or a developer will be like, okay, we want occupancy by this date. If you guys get this stage of construction done, there's a bonus for you guys, right? So there's an incentive for everyone to get this done faster. And
yeah, but faster, but properly.
Of course, properly.
Yeah, on paper properly, right? But that's why you see these guys, you know, test the load before they doctor it, so they could say, oh, hey, our cylinder strengths are good, you know, we did nothing, right? But the reality is, you know, if there's nobody on site, you know, looking after these guys and telling them, hey, you can't put that much water inside that load, you're going to fuck up the wall, you know, you run into problems.
What's the bad side of this commercial concrete business? Is it like when something goes wrong, everyone just puts their hands up and just points the fingers at each other, or someone just does not take culpability? Is that the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever anything went wrong, especially when I was on that side of the fence, the engineering firm would call up and say, "Oh yeah, your cylinders are bad," you know. But that could be bad for a whole bunch of reasons. It could be bad because your guy's not testing properly. It could be bad because the guy put the cylinders on top of something that's vibrating and everything, you know, all the aggregate fell down to the bottom.
Wow, that's brilliant. I'm going to keep my eye open for that.
Yeah, look for the cylinders.
Excellent
Make sure
tip.
that they're stored in a good place, right? Because you're not worried so much about the concrete going in. Like if you're focused on the results, you got to make sure that those cylinders are in a place where they're not going to be disturbed, right? Because, you know, people kick over coolers all the time with cylinders inside and go, oh, fuck, these are nothing, right? And then they send some guy to come pick it up, and then they bring it back to lab, and then some monkey at the lab is testing this, and then...
Wait, they have animals at the lab?
Yeah, some of these guys.
I'm going to say they're monkeys. I'm going to agree with him on that one, man. Seriously.
And then, you know, then it's up to the concrete company to defend themselves. So then either that happens one of two ways. They take cylinders off of every single load that goes out.
Really?
They started to now. Like any major pour, unless it's like a house wall or something, they start taking cylinders off every major pour, especially MTO jobs and everything. And then what they'll do is they'll have a set from the plant and a set on site that they test and they retrieve, right? That's just to cover our ass, you know, say, okay, this is what it came out as, we verified it, so if your cylinders are bad but our cylinders are okay, we're not at fault anymore, you guys figure it out.
So at a commercial level, do you guys use wax or sealer primer? What do you guys use? Or do you not?
It depends on the application, right? I mean, there's some house walls that, you know, you want to use... it's a liquid tight product that basically adds this, it's almost like a gel-like substance to the concrete so it doesn't crack or expand or anything. And that waterproofs your basement. And like you've seen like tubs made of this concrete filled with water and they're not leaking. I mean, it's a very good product. I forget the name of it, but I'll have to look up. There's other products that we put on like...
They'll use that as a finishing agent for...
No, an additive to keep it dense.
Yeah,
keep
and
it
then
dense.
there's white cure that goes on all the road base.
Wax.
That goes, wax that goes on all the sidewalks too.
We
call
do it in
like,
basements too.
Yeah, you guys do it in basements too. Yeah. There's all sorts of additives.
And that slows down the drying or curing time, right? To keep it wetter longer.
Absolutely.
Makes it harder and stronger.
Especially with the UV rays too. Like if you're pouring on a nice hot summer day and there's like no shade or anything around you, that just prevents the concrete from having like all the surface water bubble up too fast, right? I mean, you want it to happen, but you don't want it to happen too fast.
Now, I know you're a concrete guy, but really, what is your outlook to clean, straight rebar or primed rebar? Is there really a difference?
There is a difference, and it all, like I said, it all depends on the application. I personally would go coated rebar with everything if it were me. If I were building my own house.
Even your house?
Coated rebar.
That green coating stuff?
Yep.
What exactly is that stuff?
So what happens is, like you see on the Gardner, that's all rebar that hasn't been coated, right?
Yeah.
So when the snow melts and then there's salt in the water and everything and it freezes, it eats away at the...
it allows the oxygen in, right?
Exactly. It eats away at the rebar and it starts to rot. Whereas with this green coating, it'll just basically bead off and you won't have to worry about it. It won't penetrate the rebar and start to flake and start to disintegrate.
So it adds, I guess, 50% of life?
Exactly. It's worth the money. It's worth spending the money. Absolutely.
Do you find that the rebar is just as important as the concrete?
Yeah, everything's important. From the guys you pick to finish, everything. If one thing's off, like I said, you're going to see the end product and it's not going to be a nice product.
Is there you tell me, but because I'm always fascinated when I want to pick on the TTC now, the Toronto Transit Commission here in Toronto, I call them basically fucking horse-drawn carriages, the way it's just stupid. I think it should be built a different way. But they seem to be ripping up the lines on major arteries like Queen Street and King Street almost every 5, maybe 7 years. And then I noticed that. So they have those pedestals that are holding the rails that are all coated in that green stuff. And then they're sitting on top of a bed of concrete. And then they encase all of that into concrete. But then all of a sudden, a year or two later, you start seeing a whack of cracks. You start seeing a whack of fucking deterioration. And I'm like, this was just ripped up. Why is it falling apart? I get it that you've got this heavy structure that's traveling on this thing every single time. But I don't see those cracks and shit like that when I go to different countries in Europe. And they're doing the same kind of LRT setups.
Because you're drunk.
It's okay. I'm drunk half the time. I'm
no,
over there too,
I am not drunk.
But but you look at Europe and they don't have the climate that we do. They don't have the punishment.
Germany?
Russia?
No, Germany, yes. But I mean, when you look at Germany, they're like 500 years ahead of us.
They're not very funny, but they know their shit. You know what I mean?
But
you're saying their technology is 500 years ahead.
Exactly.
They're way ahead, and we don't want to embrace it. And I just thought that why doesn't a city like Toronto embrace technologies that come from other countries? Someone's already proven it there.
And it's also environmentally friendly. We're not tearing the oxygen the trees down, right?
Yes, but we have...
it all comes down to politics, and I'm going to be very careful where I walk because I don't want to like...
Car bomb.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit where you eat.
Well, not only that, I don't want anyone at TDC to be like, oh, who the fuck is this guy, right? So if anyone listens at TDC...
Mr. Smith is our guest today.
Yeah, it's not his real name.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean.
It all comes down to politics, right? I mean, you look at the trains or the LRTs, right? I mean, I think Siemens had a bid where they said, okay, we'll come to Canada, we'll build a factory, and we'll deliver all the trains you want within a year and a half. The same timeline that Bombardier has had, but because of politics and everything, they go with Bombardier.
Don't get me on the Bombardier.
Yeah, but it all comes down to that, right? Because we always want to say, oh yeah, we're Canadian innovation, Canadian this, Canadian that.
Oh really? So then why is it that when I'm stepping on all those new dimple corners at all the pedestrian walkways, they're all made in France or India?
That's a good question.
Even in the States.
Yeah, I would.
They're not even local
That's
steel.
because Trudeau's sending everything across.
I'm just amazed that, yeah, sure, we want to be Canadian, buy in our own backyard. And the Americans want to do that too.
No, exactly.
But I see those little things and they're like made in France and made in India, and we don't have our own steel here?
No, but when you look at it too, they like a contractor will be spec'd something by the city. We want you to use this product, right? If you don't have the oversight on the job site on that day and they install it, somebody comes back and goes, hey, that's not the right product. It's like, oh, well, where was your oversight?
Really?
Yeah, that's how it pretty much works.
Fuck.
Where was your oversight?
We should be politicians, Carlito.
Yeah.
I'm going for Prime Minister.
I'll vote for you.
Yeah, can I be Minister of Defense?
I'll vote for you too.
Yeah, awesome. But yeah, it all comes down to that, right? And they'll install it and be like, okay, well, your guy signed off on it for today, so if you want it ripped up and replaced, we're gonna charge you double to rip it out.
While we're on the talk of the whole TTC thing, I know that we're behind in technology and trains and transportation, and most cities don't have a lot of cars. I believe that the city's not being built well because we have contractors and construction companies that need to park and move around, and we're not designing the city accordingly to the people that we really need to build this city.
I've always said that the HOV lane should be open to contractors. Every single contractor.
And tax breaks.
I agree with you. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in the industry, but I think that when you look at the studies and you talk to contractors and they're getting a third of what the workday that they used to get back in 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they can get around the city a lot faster. That's affecting business. So that's basically what you're doing is there's got to be a percentage of these businesses that are going under, moving on to something else.
And that's why people are chipping out.
And that's exactly, they chip out. And then the big question comes from politicians where they're saying,
did you say chip out?
Yeah, chip out from politicians where they're saying, we need to get more people into trades. We need to get more people into trades. I go, you're fucking forcing them out of the trades because you're not making it. I get that trades are not a glamorous career. No. I get that you're not the next person who's making a stupid fucking app for the Kardashian fuckheads out there. But trades can be a very lucrative business to be in and an attractive business to be in.
No, they're extremely lucrative. You look at the trades right now, you know, apprentice carpenter, what are they starting off at? 25 bucks an hour. My first job, I started off at $7 an hour. I mean, the trades are extremely lucrative. I mean, hell, the elevator mechanics, they make a freaking killing. I used to work for an elevator company too.
There's nothing this guy hasn't done.
Yeah, I looked after their new construction, but I left them and went on to greener pastures because it paid a lot more. Sorry, Schindler. But was that
a low blow?
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's you know, you look at elevator mechanics and their apprentices are starting at like $38, $39 an hour, and then you know
and benefits and pension.
Yeah, yeah, and then I think it was like their last contract, it was like $58 an hour for a licensed mechanic.
Wow.
If you're an adjuster, it's like $77 an hour plus.
Good for them.
And they charge $130.
Good for them, man. That's the way it should be.
Let me ask you your favorite build and your worst nightmare build in concrete.
Favorite build definitely was a military application. I always
challenging.
It's always challenging.
Newest products.
Yeah, it was a product, and it was just like the finished result was amazing. I really
well, let's call it bulletproof.
Yeah. No, it was one of my favorite projects because you know I support our troops and everything, and you know, it really felt good to do a project like that and then, you know, to ensure that, hey, you know, this runway is going to last the next 30, 40 years and they're not going to have to worry about it. Worst project was Billy Bishop Tunnel at the Billy Bishop Airport.
Really?
A PCL job.
I heard that's been going for years.
What don't we know about that?
Well, that tunnel flooded during construction. That was a disaster.
How long of a tunnel was that?
It's like 100 meters. I can't remember the exact specs, but it basically goes underneath the water and it comes right back up.
300 feet.
Yeah, about 300 feet, yeah.
And it flooded.
And it flooded.
So that's the reason why we can't do a tunnel from the 427 to the DVP.
Well, I mean, you're going right underneath water, right? And you had to dig through bedrock and everything.
The Lincoln Tunnel is underneath water.
Let's really talk about it. There wasn't proper additives to it. The concrete wasn't dense enough. I mean, back in Europe, my uncle has no roof on. It's just a concrete slab. Yeah. There's no water that gets in, man. It's been like 30 years.
What went wrong with that tunnel?
Anytime you dig near water, you need sump pumps to pump the excess water out. It was
even hydraulic.
Yeah, it was a case of, I think it was like the security guard who didn't do a walkthrough in the tunnel or notice any water, or I can't remember the exact terms, but they came back on Monday and the whole tunnel was flooded. Escalators, moving walks were installed and they had to rip that out. It was a disaster. Yeah, I'd say it was like 75% complete when it flooded, and there was a massive lawsuit that went on.
And, you know, going back in Trenton, like there's a beautiful island there, Prince Edward County.
Yeah.
Belleville's such a beautiful place. Yep. Bombers, you must have loved that view.
It was beautiful out there, and then the local nightlife, particularly, I think it's like the Locomotion Lap Dancing Club. That was pretty good too. Company credit card, but
I think it was burned down.
There's a plug. There's a plug.
No,
it's gone.
I'm kidding, of course, Charlie. Don't go through my expense reports from 2013. But yeah, no, it's. No, it was nice working out there. The people there were super friendly, and yeah, no, it was a different world working on what I call the ideal construction site, where you have people watching everything you do. You know, you sneeze the wrong way, you're going to get kicked off site. Whereas, you know, like you come back from working in like a the ideal construction site to like downtown where, you know, buddy's in his truck smoking a cigarette, flicks it off, and it hits some baby in the face, you know.
Oh my God.
Because they're not thinking anything.
Yeah, no,
they think they're in concrete planet. That's what it is.
No, exactly. I've seen guys like throw water bottles, cans inside concrete that's getting poured, and I'm like, what are you doing?
I fucking hate that. Why do they do that? I can't stand that, man.
Yeah,
I'm not one of those guys. I don't know.
Yeah, like what the fuck are you doing?
I don't even. I'll spit in a bush or in a garbage can. I'm that
Yeah,
kind
you
of guy.
can't do that in concrete because
I
you
hate
don't want
watching guys work everywhere.
Sean, can I ask you who's your favorite concrete supplier?
I'm loyal to Dufferin, and the problems that we didn't have any problems when we were out at CFB Trenton doing that work there. They're admixtures and everything, and they're the guys that they have working on these mixes. They're mad scientists, as you know, as much of a mad.
Mark's out of here.
Handsome
Thanks
Mark.
for the drinks, Mark. Appreciate it.
But
I mean,
some vodka here for you guys.
Thank you.
Ciao, Mark. See you guys.
yeah. See you later.
Sorry, Sean.
Yeah, no
so
worries.
Dufferin.
I get it. Concrete's not that glamorous, but if you have guys that know what they're doing, like the mad scientists, so to speak, you know, creating these admixtures and creating these crazy mixes like 150, 120 MPa.
Who are these people that are saying that concrete's not glamorous? I fucking think concrete's glamorous.
Everybody loves concrete.
Yeah, like a lot of the architectural work on the Mississauga BRT, we did as well. Like that was a project that I was on for about 6 months.
That's
before they
beautiful
wrote it.
stuff,
Yeah,
man.
no, that's all architectural concrete. It's
Yeah.
beautiful stuff.
Where do you see yourself in the future?
Are you staying in concrete? You happy with concrete?
I mean, like I said, I'm working for a company right now. I mean, we do a lot of work with concrete and we do a lot of work with contractors because we're the company I work for right now. We have to basically account for concrete, rebar, and everything being put in because when we put in our broadcast antennas and our DAS systems, so distributed antenna systems for cell service and everything, we have to be aware of where everything's going so we get the best coverage. So, I mean, I still see myself in the industry. We'll see if something better comes along or... You know, they say, you know, Sean for Mayor of Toronto, absolutely.
I'm in. You got my vote.
How do we get the concrete morons here that are the politicians paying attention to what other people in other parts of the world are doing with concrete to actually implement those ideas? How do we get that? Is that possible?
Getting them on,
Very good
on
question,
site
man.
terms, yeah. Getting them on site visits, you know, like say, you know, you see it all the time where a politician will travel to a different city and visit overnight or visit a site that's going on. Look at what they're doing in, say, New York or Boston or what they're doing over in Berlin or what they're doing over in London. And it's like, okay, we can't do everything exactly the way they're doing over it. Because, they're doing it over there because of codes, etc. But we could take some of the aspects that they're using and, you know, implement some of those aspects in our projects. So,
Yeah. So you bringing that up makes me think of, what do you think about the whole fucking Dubai thing? Are they just going ballistic and crazy?
I'm very interested in that.
well, they got to find a way to clean their drug money, but I mean,
I know slave labor, a lot
exactly.
of Pakistanis building, a lot of Pakistanis dying.
No, it's atrocious what's happening to the workers
is.
over there, and you know, I feel sorry for them. I have a colleague who was actually working in Qatar building the new FIFA stadiums for the World Cup. You know, you look at it and it's like, yeah, okay, what happens when all this money runs out, right? Yeah, they're building a economy that's based on oil right now, but and I think they could see that where it's
There's
like,
an
okay,
expiration.
Yeah, there's going to be an expiration, and they're going to have to solely rely on tourism over there. I think spending all the money on construction, I think they could be focusing on other things in their economy rather than
They can balance it out.
exactly.
But I'm amazed on some of this stuff because I've seen conceptual drawings of certain buildings that are coming in their
Oh,
way.
it's wild.
And even like, what was it, 5 or 6 years ago with the Burj Khalifa, and all of a sudden
yeah.
you're like going, what the fuck? Like, how are you even thinking about these things? But yeah, I get it. But you should balance it out. I'm fascinated that where are they getting the technology from? Because it's not from Dubai. It's not from the Middle East. These engineers are coming from other parts of the world.
No, exactly. They import all their engineers, and they have no problem paying them because, you know, this guy that I know, he was making, I think his daily rate was like $3 or $4 grand US a day.
Wow.
Just to show up.
Just to show up and inspect, ensure that everything conform with the drawings. And I mean, it's crazy over there because you get guys from Europe, you get guys from North America, you get guys from South America who
But that's what I like. I like that there's a melting pot. When we come back to North America, specifically Toronto, it's fucking a guy from the east, a guy from the west,
The
a guy
cheapest
from the
guy.
south,
Yeah.
the cheapest guy, whoever,
the cheapest guy.
like whoever barks the loudest. And I'm like, that's not how it should be. It should be like, it should be a pool of ideas and contributing. That's what it should be. But how do we get to that point? Can we get to that point, or is it impossible to get to that point?
We could get to that point if egos are put aside. And in construction,
Oh,
you know,
fucking construction.
yeah. That was my next point. That was my next point. You know, In construction, everyone's got an ego, especially guys who've been in the business and who've had a successful business. Oh yeah, I've been doing this business, you know, like this for the last 25 years and I made a couple $100 million. Who the fuck are you to tell me how to do my job? But if we put egos aside and we'd be like, hey, you know, there's new technology, there's new ideas out there. Hey, why don't we try this? Put that aside and be like, okay, I can forget my ego because I'm going to make a fuck ton of money. Usually,
there's two ways of doing it.
Great point, Sean.
Money talks and shit walks.
And, and this is what the listeners need to hear. We can make a difference. We need to make some sacrifices. And sometimes when you don't worry about the money comes. When you try hard, you're not making money. I wanted to talk about how environmentally friendly concrete is. I really think that a lot of people are set on wood. Everywhere they look, it's wood. You know, the big thing is wood.
Really?
The cool thing right now is wood. What happens to concrete when you have leftover or you do a demo? Everything's recyclable, right?
Everything's recyclable. We even in some cases reuse the concrete in mixes. You know,
right.
we use we call them chips in the industry. So we have concrete chips that we put in the mix to reuse it, right? Because you know we only have enough resources. We only have enough limestone. We only have enough sand that we can keep pulling out of the ground, you know, for the next like 20, 30 years, right? And then after that, when it's gone, it's gone.
Then we'll use plastic.
Exactly.
Save the turtles. Yeah, okay.
That's the reality of it. People get on this environmental bandwagon. Oh yeah, concrete's bad. Concrete, you know, this is bad.
What's bad?
Log is bad. Everything
What is
about
bad about
It's bad on your
concrete?
back. That's
yeah,
about it.
Yeah.
Is it they're thinking it's bad because you've got this big honking
Yeah,
truck that's driving through the core and
Yeah,
it's
it's
combusting?
that, and then you see all like some of the slurry that you see on the street after the guy rinses.
Yeah,
down.
but you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that anymore.
I'm
But
pretty
that's
sure,
changed.
I'm pretty sure 20 Uber Eats and 20 Uber vehicles is probably harsher on the environment than one concrete truck
And
driving
they create
around.
more car accidents than
exactly.
anybody.
It's just like those environmental protesters that closed down the Bloor Viaduct the other day and let me sit in traffic for 3 hours. You know, they were quick to, you know, stop traffic because this is the March for Our Lives kind of deal. And then after that, walk across the bridge at Broadview and go have a McDonald's for lunch, right? You know, so it's those people in power.
Contradicting.
Yeah, those people in power who are making these policies and these decisions.
It's the new generation.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we need to focus more on what's actually going on rather than, you know,
facts.
on the facts rather than third-hand knowledge of
agree.
what's out there. So
I agree.
What do you want to see change in the industry?
where do I begin?
Oh, fuck, that much, huh? What are the top 3 things that need to change in this industry?
I think there's got to be more respect for the people at the bottom, definitely. So, like,
100% for
100%.
Man,
that.
is he my friend or what?
100% for that.
there's got to be more respect for the workers, right? Because, you know, you have some project managers who are just on this fucking ego trip, and you just want to, like, take them in the bathroom and just punch the fucking shit out of
Just
them.
swing the chute a little harder,
Oh,
right?
exactly, right?
Dump the concrete right there.
Yeah, exactly. There's got to be a dialogue, you know, from the guy who's, you know, operating the chute and then the guy who's, like, you know, profiting from that chute, you know, the CEO of the company. They got to have a lot more involvement.
Why can't we all just treat everybody on the same level playing field? Why do you have to have this sort of class system? I can't fucking stand that.
I can't
I
stand it
respect
either.
that CEO that actually will shake the hand of a driver and just go, thank you so much for bringing this load to this job site, than someone who just stays in their nice clean suit and a nice white hat. Treat everybody the same, man, so that everybody will be collective. They're going to want to work harder. They're going to want to work as a team.
Well, while we're on that topic, you did mention New York, and you did mention power companies. You mentioned, you know, you got to be careful what you say. You never know what can happen. Let's talk about a mafia story with concrete.
What the fuck? You're really going to go there?
I always hear stories about concrete.
Where's Hoffa? You got to tell us where Hoffa is, okay?
I don't know where Hoffa is, but I can tell you there are probably some people who buried him who work in the...
I'm not saying shit. My name is John Smith, by the way.
And mine is
No, but you know,
there's
but you could tell right away. There's some companies out there where it's like, oh, where do these guys get all this money, right? You know, like this guy, you know.
Well, there is good money in this business.
No, there is good money in this business, but it's like, okay, this guy, okay, so the guy who's doing concrete forming. And you know, he's on the phone with a guy saying named Paulie for like about 20 minutes as he's vibrating the load, and then he's like, "Okay, guys, it's 2 o'clock. Let's get out of here, right?" And then he, you know, puts on his nice little Cole Haan loafers and hops into his Porsche Cayenne, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" Yeah, not mafia at all.
yeah, it's funny.
No collusion here, right? Hashtag MAGA.
One of my last questions: what's your goal for the future and this year? Like, what's your real goal?
My goal is I got about 6 or 7 projects that are currently on the go with my company, so I have to wrap those up. We have one
For the rest of the year?
For the rest of the year. I have one project that we're on the verge of wrapping up right now, and because of, I guess, privacy reasons, I can't really get into it.
For
but
sure.
Hopefully, we get this wrapped up and it's out of the way. Not only so we get paid, but it's just, you know, a project that was started, you know, back in 2015, and then we've been working with various government agencies, especially transit agencies, to get this done. And there's only one thing holding it up, and it's just politics right now. And if we could just put the politics aside and be like, okay, you know, this is a very important project. I know you guys have a very important project too. So why don't we just work together? Let's just get it done.
What a dumb idea. Huh?
Yeah.
What a absolutely dumb idea.
But
You're not selfish at all.
I just want to get the job done, man. And then
Can you
go
imagine
home.
how much better things would be if actually people did that? They
Yeah.
just worked together.
Well, and you know, Sean started from the bottom of construction. Like he started in it, like painting and renovations, and worked his way all the way up to. I'm really proud of you, dude.
Oh, thanks, man.
No beer. I'm sorry. I know that you enjoy that, and Manny also.
Well, maybe one day we'll do a podcast where we'll
absolutely.
just be fucking drunk.
Well, I did want to mention one last thing in my notes. A lot of people don't realize that Manny's done a lot of concrete. Also, he really like focuses on his videos. If you watch them, there's a lot of really cool videos. But one thing he never does is he never films himself, and he's always wearing a sombrero at the job sites.
That is absolutely not true. I do not
It's like
own
4
a
feet
sombrero.
wide.
I don't even have a poncho. What's wrong with you, man?
I have
All
to.
right. On that note, did we cover everything about concrete? Are we missing
think
it?
we did,
I
yeah.
think we talked a lot about
Yeah,
concrete, man.
we focused on commercial concrete. That's what this talk was about. Thank you for all the knowledge.
Fascinating talk.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah,
really
no problem.
appreciate
Thank you
it,
for having
man.
me on. Appreciate it.
There we go. So, thanks again, Sean. Great talk, great information, and reach out to us, man. Send us some DMs if you want, and ask us more questions, and we'll throw them Sean's way, and we'll get some answers for you. But this one was a really interesting one, man. Concrete. I love
T.O.
it.
baby.
Yeah.
416. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. We out of here.
All right, ciao.
Out of here.